Welcome to the Caribbean Leadership Radio Series, produced by the Caribbean Leadership Programe under the Caribbean Center for Development Administration, CARICAD, where we provide a number of leadership development interventions tailored for the Caribbean context in support of public sector transformation as well as regional development. In this Caribbean Leadership Radio Series, we will be discussing a range of leadership issues within the public sector context which impact our national and regional development in the Caribbean.
The Caribbean Leadership Radio Series, where Caribbean leaders discuss Caribbean leadership. Here's your host, Dr. Lloyd Parks.
In today's program, we are going to be looking at the topic of strategic planning and its importance in the Caribbean public sector context. And we have with us Mr. Franklyn Michael, who is currently the program specialist with responsibility for planning and communications at the Caribbean Center for Development Administration, CARICAD. Mr. Michael is an Antigua and Barbados national, but a Caribbean regionalist at heart. His career spans more than 30 years in the areas of management, organizational development, strategic planning, leadership training, and emergency and disaster preparedness and management. He has held several appointments around this wonderful Caribbean region of ours, including Permanent Secretary in the Office of the Chief Minister and Director of Emergency Operations Center in the island of Montserrat, where he resided for many, many years. He has authored and co-authored a wide range of strategic plans, contingency plans, and consultancy reports. And he is well qualified to speak with us on this topic, as he has led a number of strategic planning interventions right around the Caribbean region in various public services. Mr. Michael, thank you so much for joining us.
Very happy to be here, Dr. Park.
Start off by telling us a little bit about your own personal leadership journey and how did you get into this area of strategic planning?
In a sense, I can probably say I was always into strategic planning. Going back many, many moons now, I first became Director of Agriculture at the age of 29 in Montserrat. And it was at a time of transition for the department when we recognized as a staff, as a unit, I'd been in the department for a few years before that we needed to be different, we needed to do things differently. We needed to produce value for stakeholders. And we were very early converts to the idea of strategic planning. And in actual fact, every year, we took a couple of days at the start of the year to decide where's the focus. How does it connect with what we did last year? How does it connect with what we are doing this year? Now, our methodology was not as intricate then as the one that we use at CARICAD now.
Yes.
But the intention and the importance was the same, because we used to defend that when we were criticized for shutting down the department for a couple of days. We used to say, we are shutting down for 2 days or 3 days so that the other 250 working days of the year can make sense.
Indeed.
So we were early converts, and I had the opportunity and privilege of leading a team of people who genuinely believed in strategic planning. And just a quick example of how that worked for us. On one occasion, there was a regional fisheries meeting, and I attended the meeting with the head of fisheries. Mm-hmm. And he said it was a regional organization, to the head of that organization that I won't for the moment name, he said, look, I didn't have to come to this meeting. Our veterinarian could have come to this meeting. So the head of that organization said, look, what are you talking about? This is a fisheries meeting. How could the vet come to this? The head of fisheries said the vet could come to this because in our department, everybody knows what the critical issues for all strategic areas are and what the priorities are and what our goals and objectives are. This is a strategy meeting. The vet could have represented us. So That's an early memory from way back. Working through British Virgin Islands, we developed in the disaster office a strategic plan for that office. And then when the volcanic crisis came in Montserrat, we did a lot of planning.
What value does the average citizen get from public sector strategic planning?
Let's refer to our notes. And let me use the definition that we use at CARICAD and then come back and relate our subsequent discussion to it. For strategic planning at CARICAD, we use a definition that comes from the University of Michigan. And it says strategic planning is a coordinated and systematic process for developing a plan for the overall course and direction of the enterprise for the purpose of optimizing future potential. Now, to break that down, first of all, strategic planning allows us to very clearly decide what is this organization. You know, we go to work every day and we sometimes don't really think, why was this organization set up? Yeah. Especially if it's been around for
a very long time,
like a post office.
And worse if it's enshrined in the Constitution.
Precisely.
Because it's in the Constitution.
Right, yes. Okay, so first of all, what is this organization? But then we go on beyond that. What is it trying to accomplish? Who is it serving? What's the long-term vision for this organization? And what are our issues? What are our challenges? What is the context in which we work? For example, we use what's called the PSTLE analysis, where we look at the political issues, the economic, the social, the technological, the environmental, and the legal. Yeah. Thank you. Now, in looking at that sort of analysis, what we come away with is a context for this organization. How does it fit into all of that? And then you move beyond that. So what are the strengths? What are the weaknesses? What are the opportunities? What are the challenges? Now, I'll be the first to admit that it is a very involved process. But as we said before, if you go through this process, you will realize, first of all, you're going to understand your organization very well. You're going to realistically assess what it can do. And you're going to focus the energy not just of the leaders themselves, but on the entire organization on precisely what the priorities are. And that is where it starts in terms of the importance of strategic planning. You're putting energy and effort and resources into what really matters.
And as I listen to you, I think we want things to be planned. If you don't plan how the traffic is going to flow, you're going to have traffic problems. If you don't plan how you're going to provide health services, when there's an outbreak of a particular disease, how will you address it? So really and truly, I believe that, the average citizen has a need to be concerned about the extent to which governments are actually using strategic planning to drive how they deliver services to the citizens.
One of the difficulties we have, and I've said this in the context of some of the areas I've worked in, disaster management being one. I think sometimes in the public service, we put too much magic and mystery into our work. In other words, we create an environment in which it looks like only a few people can understand this, and a few of us are experts. Now, with strategic planning, we need to be able to show people what we are doing is just understanding how best we can serve you with the resources that we have. So we are not wasting time. So we are not just doing busy work. We're producing results that impact your life. And we can bring you into that process as a stakeholder to share your perspectives and to help us to set our goals.
We're just going to take a very short break, but please stay tuned. We'll be right back.
The Caribbean Leadership Radio Series, where Caribbean leaders discuss Caribbean leadership.
Across Caribbean public services, there is great demand for transformational leadership to create an environment that fosters innovation in public service delivery. But how do you know if your organization has this enabling environment? Grounded in research, the Caribbean Leadership Project has developed an enabling environment assessment. This provides a wide range of strategies and actions to help take public sector organizations and regional institutions to a higher level in enabling transformational leaders. To find out how you can use this assessment to foster and inspire purpose-driven leadership, to build leadership capacity for action, encourage collaboration, and support the achievement of results, visit us at www.clptoolkit.org and contact us at info@caribbeanleadership.org. Let us help your organization learn, network, succeed.
The Caribbean Leadership Radio Series, where Caribbean leaders discuss Caribbean leadership.
Welcome back to our Caribbean Leadership Radio Series. Today's program, we are examining the topic of strategic planning as a leadership tool for Caribbean public services. And we have with us Mr. Franklyn Michael, Program Specialist in charge of planning here at the Caribbean Center for Development Administration. Mr. Franklyn, what do you see as some of the major leadership challenges facing public services in the region as it relates to implementing strategic planning?
First of all, Loy, we have to accept that strategic planning, or formal planning, let's say, because strategic planning isn't the only form of planning, but formal planning is not as widespread as it should be in the public sector in the region.
Indeed, if you think about town and country planning, rural and physical planning is not as strong as it ought to be.
There are lots of ministries and departments that do not have strategic plans, and there are others that have strategic plans that are 15 years old. So that's the first issue. If you go into a ministry or a department, you may find that it doesn't have a strategic plan. So there's your first challenge. Assuming that there is one, assuming that it's current, assuming that it's good. The other challenge that arises is the gap between planning and implementation. Now, at CARICAD, we've recognized this, and we've actually come away with what we call a schema for strategic delivery, where on one page, we show how you move managerially from a strategic plan to delivering outputs and ultimately outcomes. It involves looking at action planning, where you focus on precisely who is leading and supporting which projects and programs. What's the time frame? What are the resource needs? How is this connected with the budget? All of that action planning has to be done. So if leaders don't engage in action planning, then we have a weakness there as well. The other challenge that we tend to have is something from my own experience, is related to history. Our leadership style. Historically, our public services were driven by the reality of colonialism.
Yes.
As an authoritarian type of leadership model. If you were a permanent secretary a few decades ago, let's just be kind and say decades.
Yes.
A few decades ago, the idea was, you were not a leader, you were the boss. And there's a difference between leader and boss. So
what you say goes.
Precisely. Yes. Okay, and in the famous word of Sparks Calypso, when I talk, no dog, they're back. Now, if you don't adopt a leadership style, and if you don't exemplify leadership in a way which models the best of leadership, you can find that people are not following you.
Yes.
And if they're not following you, people can always show that they're busy at work, but they're not producing results.
Yes.
So that's the other challenge. How do you build the team, reflect the values, and model the approach to implementing work on a day-to-day basis, connecting back from what I have done today, this week, this month, with the vision for the organization.
All is not gloom and doom in the region. There are examples of organizations that have, in fact, been very effective in implementing strategic planning. We'd love you to share one such example. And what are some of the lessons that we can all learn from this particular story that you're going to share with us?
Interestingly, we're talking together on a day when CARICAD has just come out of an engagement with the Barbados Vocational Training Board, where we, the executive director and I, led a presentation to the board about the Barbados Vocational Board's strategic plan, which CARICAD facilitated, which facilitated the development of the plan. Now, this is the second such plan that CARICAD has supported at BVTV. And what we were able to show is that as a board, the organization between the two time frames, the one in which the first strategic plan was completed, and the second one has been completed in draft, how progress that can be ascribed to what was declared as your intention, how that progress has been made. How do you link your second plan with your first plan? So Barbados Vocational Training Board is certainly one such organization that we can point to. Interestingly, Dominica, several years ago, had an overarching strategic approach for the public sector, which did a lot of good as well.
Yes.
Montserrat, small as it is, several years ago, you could see the connection between the medium-term development plan for Montserrat, the ministry department's goals and objectives, and the national budget. Jamaica and Trinidad and Tobago have long-term strategic development plans at the national level.
Yes.
So as you said, there are points of light, if one can put it that way, across the region. But what we want to see, Loy, is a culture of results-driven approaches to implementation. And I should, of course, mention that the CARICOM Secretariat itself now, over the course of the last 5 years or so, has developed its own strategic plan, its own operational plan, and is getting the regional institutions, CARICAD included, to work under that umbrella. So things are definitely improving, things are definitely moving. But what we have to do more of is build capacity, not just to plan, but to implement those plans across all of our organs, institutions, ministries, departments, and other entities.
In those instances where you have seen strategic planning working effectively, what caused those successes to be a reality?
What we like to describe at CARICAD as the interface between leadership and management.
Yes.
In other words, leaders at several levels taking on the responsibility, putting up their hands and saying, it's up to me. It's not looking left, it's not looking right, it's saying it's up to me. If I do what I'm required to do, things will improve. But deliberately accepting that it is not just about that transformational energy, that transformational philosophy, that sense of values, not just about who I am, not what I know, what I can do. It's also about how I understand the rules, how I recognize that they are procedures, how I use all the tools that are available to me. How does my staff meetings connect with my strategic plan? How do my organizational assessments connect with my strategic plan? How do I build my team that the team lives the vision? So that interface between leadership and management is where we find that you've had the greatest success. And to that extent, we have actually been working with ministries and departments. Grenada recently, for example, all of the permanent secretaries as a group, and then subsequently the Ministry of Health, and we're going to be working with others, Montserrat. Interestingly, the political leadership and the senior management looking at that interface between leadership and management, because if you get that right, a lot of really good things happen in organizations.
Fantastic. We are going to take another break. Please stay with us.
The Caribbean Leadership Radio Series, where Caribbean leaders discuss Caribbean leadership.
Does your organization have leaders with the self-awareness and confidence to lead effectively? Can they develop high-performing teams? Can they work effectively with multiple stakeholders? And are they equipped to navigate change and complexity? For these and other leadership challenges, the Caribbean Leadership Program offers a suite of virtual, face-to-face, and customized interventions to meet your needs. Our 5-day workshop on leading change and transition will provide senior executives with the mindset shift and tools to successfully lead change initiatives. Our transformational leadership development program is ideal for preparing high-potential leaders for succession to executive roles. And our mid-level leadership development program is perfect for those leading from the middle. For details on these and other offerings, visit our website at www.caribbeanleadership.org. Join us to learn, network, succeed.
The Caribbean Leadership Radio Series, where Caribbean leaders discuss Caribbean leadership.
You're listening to the Caribbean Leadership Radio Series, and today's topic is strategic planning as a leadership tool for Caribbean public services. We're happy to have Mr. Franklyn Michael, who is Program Specialist with responsibility for planning at the Caribbean Center for Development Administration, CARICAD. Mr. Michael, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the role of ICT in facilitating strategic planning.
First of all, Loy, it is important that our leaders recognize that ICT is a tool that can help us to make progress in a whole range of areas. If we start with the strategic plan document itself, a lot of what goes into a strategic plan document is research information. Quite a bit of it is research information that we don't necessarily have ourselves immediately.
Yes.
We have to get from other sources. Now, if your ICT system is up and functioning the way it should be, getting access to that information should be a breeze. when you're preparing a document like a strategic plan, you go through many iterations. There are many versions. Now, I'm old enough to know the days and remember the days when you used to use typewriters, correcting ink, and Gestetner machines to run off copies. The fact that we no longer have to do that, and we can use technology to help us in producing the document itself. We can produce 50-page documents and type them in the course of a day and a half. That's the first big advantage.
Yeah.
The other thing is what technology itself enables us to do by way of service delivery. We no longer have to think that the only way that we can provide service to people is when we are in direct face-to-face contact with them. That we can provide services online. A lot of the applications, if you're in the business of training, for example, a lot of the applications that you would want to consider at least as a first run, that can be done through technology-enabled methods. When we think of even the assessments, prior learning assessments, for example.
Yes.
And people, you don't necessarily want to be using up resources to bring people from one location to another. If you're doing a prior learning assessment, that can be done using technology. When we look at the services that we provide to the public, in many, many cases, we can in actual fact deliver those services by using technology, using fewer human resources, because in many cases we're asked to do more with less, as we say famously now. And technology is the thing that makes the difference in doing that.
Yeah.
But again, our leadership has to be convinced. It's not about you being an expert yourself in technology. There was a time I knew very little as far as I was concerned about technology, but I knew what technology was capable of doing. For example, in the volcanic crisis in Montserrat, I couldn't do it, but I knew that there are people who could do it. I said, we need some software for us to track relief supplies.
Yes.
So that as permanent secretary, I could sit in my office and know what container warehouse 1 contained.
Yes.
And I would only have to request a physical check of that perhaps once a month. Not that if we wanted to know what was in container 1, that every day you'd have to send somebody to count what's in that.
Yes.
And if you're doing that with 2 warehouses, right, if you're doing that with 2 warehouses and 40 containers, you realize what you're doing. All you're doing is busy work. So the technology can do a lot. And let me say quickly too, legislation, for example.
Yes.
It's important that we have access to our legislation. It's important that we have access to our records. And if we can get those things digitized, the access to them, finger touch away, so to speak.
Yes.
You have maybe a 50-page piece of legislation, and if you have 200 of those, you know what it's like in the old days. I mean, when you had all those legal books all around you. And if you make these things searchable, if you make your archive searchable, there is so much that can be accomplished in a short period of time that, provided our leadership accepts the role that technology can play, we not only become more effective, but we become far more efficient, and our stakeholders that we deliver services to will be far more satisfied.
Digital leadership has become a buzzword, particularly in public services, not just in the Caribbean, but around the world. And the fact that we need our leaders to be able to have that appreciation and be able to lead change processes using other things, but also incorporating ICT as a part of the change.
I'll give a quick example of a previous project we worked on here at CARICAD. This is the use of ICT in strategic planning in parliaments.
Yes.
And our colleague from Australia was able to point out to us that their parliamentary records, their Hansard and the like, digitized back to 1902. Now, think of what it means if you're just in research, Lloyd,
yes,
or if you're a politician, aspiring politician, and you want to know what Parliament did for 117 or 118 years. And you can just go and search these documents at your leisure, putting in your keywords, getting the information that you want. Here in Barbados, for example, a lot of work has already taken place at Parliament, and other parliaments are following. Trinidad and Tobago, there's a lot of this that's happening.
And cabinets as well. Office of the cabinet,
precisely,
doing that with cabinet papers.
Precisely. Now, if we can do all of that, because if you think, those who have some association with cabinet offices and those who have some association with parliaments, if you remember how resource intensive it is, both from the human resource standpoint and the material, the paper resources the like, to service those organizations and entities, we can appreciate what technology can do there. So we certainly, from a CARICAD perspective, we are encouraging all of our leaders to get on that bandwagon where technology is going to be used as a tool for greater efficiency, effectiveness, and innovation.
Last question for you, Mr. Michael. How can senior leaders strengthen their organization and even their own personal capacity in this area of strategic planning in public services in the region?
Well, first of all, as with a lot of areas of self-improvement, develop an interest in the area because it is an important tool. If you develop an interest in strategic planning as a leader manager, it is so easy nowadays to get information on it.
Oh, yes. It's a fingertip away.
It's a fingertip away. It's a touch away. So, but organize your material. Make sure that whatever you're downloading, if it's strategic management in its broadest sense, you file it away as strategic management. If it's strategic planning, it's strategic planning. But also, CARICAD, there's a lot of experience we have. We have a little model that we have on our website that we're still using, which we're going to update. But as you know, challenge to be out in the field and still back in the office updating. So it's taking us a little while. But we're going to update our model for strategic planning. But look at documents like that. Talk to organizations that you know have been involved in strategic planning process. Engage us at CARICAD. We're always willing to talk and share. Find out what's involved in the process. How can CARICAD help? If you have a few dollars that you can consider sharing, let's talk about how we might be able to assist you in a strategic planning effort. So there is a lot, but it comes down to commitment, a willingness to learn, and more particularly to accept responsibility once again that if things are going to change, it's going to be up to me to help to lead it.
Mr. Michael, on that note, we just want to thank you so much. I mean, the conversation has been so rich. And if you're listening, please remember, consultancy services in strategic planning is one of the many services that we offer here at CARICAD. You've been listening to the Caribbean Leadership Radio Series. Please check with this station for other episodes in our series. To learn more about the Caribbean Leadership Program, please visit our website at www.caribbeanleadership.org. Thanks for joining us.